The United States Navy Observation Squadron 67 was purported to be an observation unit, as evidenced by the unit patch sewn onto their uniforms depicting an aircraft sending signals to the ground. However, this was merely a cover-up for their actual mission, which involved the exact opposite. They were listening to what was happening on the ground instead of interfering. Using dropped microphones and state-of-the-art sensors, the VO-67's missions were set up to help the military gain intelligence on the enemy's movement along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The missions were so secretive that not every official in the Navy knew about the squadron or the kind of activities they performed, and even the members were not told about their objectives until right before deployment. However, they had luck on their side. Despite the risks involved in their covert operations, the VO-67 team had the advantage of flying one of the most effective and versatile aircraft of the post-war era, Lockheed's P-2, a naval plane designed for maritime patrol and anti-submarine warfare. War delays. In early 1941, as the world geared up for World War II, Lockheed Aircraft's Vega division began working on a new twin-engined land-based patrol bomber. The aircraft, known as Model 26, would use the Wright R-3350 Cyclone engine to carry a more significant bomb load for longer distances than other four-engined heavy bombers, like the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-24 Liberator. However, the model wasn't a priority, and its engines were eventually used for another project, Boeing's B-29 Super Bomber. The venture paid off as it went on to make history in the global conflict. Years later, in April of 1944, the Lockheed project was given a second wind, and the U.S. Navy ordered 15 models. The result was the Lockheed P-2V Neptune, the only American-made naval land-based patrol aircraft ever designed solely for this purpose. The Neptune was a sizable mid-wing bomber with a wingspan of 103 feet 10 inches, a height of 29 feet 4 inches, and an empty weight of 50,000 pounds. It also featured an impressive range of armament and anti-surface vessel weaponry. In addition to cannons and heavy-caliber machine guns, the maritime patrol bombers could carry torpedoes, mines, bombs of various weights, and even externally held high-explosive rockets. And inside, the P-2 was geared for military success, with state-of-the-art specialized equipment. The Neptune. The Neptune's production began in 1946, after having flown for the first time shortly after the German surrender a year earlier. As a maritime patrol and anti-submarine warfare aircraft, the model had impressive endurance and range, a long internal weapons bay, defensive capabilities, and solid short-field capabilities. Such promising features were put to the test when, from September 29th through October 1st, 1947, the P-2V1 truculent turtle model flew for 11,235 miles from Perth, Australia to Columbus, Ohio, without stopping or refueling, winning a world record that would stand for almost 4 decades. And although the Lockheed P-2 did not participate in World War II, the Neptune aircraft series became one of the most successful post-war designs of the United States. The model proved so versatile and effective that it spawned a series of variants in different specialized roles, including airborne early warning, nuclear weapons carrier, special sensor aircraft, drone controller crew trainer, Antarctic ski plane, electronic surveillance, gunship, and several more. The model was the standard land-based anti-submarine patrol aircraft in its primary role, and it was intended to operate as the hunter side of a hunter-killer duo, completed by destroyers. The Neptune also went on to serve in the Netherlands, Japan, and many other nations after the establishment of NATO in the late 1940s. Versatile service. While Neptune split its time between the U.S. Navy and Air Force, it is most remembered for its service with the maritime branch. The model saw its first combat during the Korean War, where Neptunes were used in mine-laying, ground attack, day and night bombing and rocket attack, and armored combat transport missions. Then, during the Vietnam War, the Army used it for electronic warfare and night and all-weather interdiction missions. The first radio research company also used it to intercept low-powered tactical voice and Morse code radio signals. Furthermore, the Navy used the P-2 and its different variants as a gunship, overland reconnaissance, and sensor deployment aircraft, as well as in its traditional role as a maritime patrol aircraft. It was with the seaborne branch that the Lockheed P-2 Neptune excelled at covert and clandestine missions, participating in a highly regarded observation squadron that went on to win one of the most prestigious honors in the armed forces. Igloo White and Observation Squadron 67. Unsatisfied with the results of the bombing campaign against North Vietnam, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara established Igloo White, a covert joint military electronic warfare operation. Using the cover of darkness, dense jungle, and bad weather conditions, North Vietnamese trucks used to carry critical supplies down the infamous Ho Chi Minh Trail without being detected. Because large numbers of American ground troops were not allowed into neutral Laos to stop the trucks, the plan was to use dropped microphones and seismographic sensors to gain intelligence on the enemy's moves along the trail to plan for airstrikes. Then, in February of 1967, the U.S. Navy established Observation Squadron 67, a clandestine military intelligence aircraft team based at the Nakhon Phanom Royal Thai Air Force Base across the Mekong River from Laos. Despite its name, VO-67 was not an observation unit. Rather, the squadron flew the heavily modified OP-2E Neptune aircraft, equipped with M60 machine guns and an armored belly, and sporting a jungle green paint scheme to achieve its goals. Valor and Sacrifice. The mission assigned to the men of VO-67 appeared deceptively simple. Take off from their base in Thailand, fly a short distance into Laos, and drop air-delivered seismic intrusion detectors and acoustic seismic intrusion detectors along the Ho Chi Minh Trail to detect enemy supply movements. However, as the lifeblood of the war for the communist enemy, the Ho Chi Minh Trail was a hostile environment for American air crews. But although the missions were short-lived, they were filled with adrenaline-pumping danger. While the service prepared for a loss rate of up to 70%, the brave men from the VO-67 exceeded all expectations. Nevertheless, tragedy struck when 20 men from 3 crews lost their lives in 3 separate incidents within 6 weeks in 1968. One, Commander Paul Milius, is still reported as missing in action, after allowing 7 crewmen to bail out of their damaged Neptunes before going down himself. For his heroic actions, Milius earned a Navy Cross and had a destroyer named after him. Despite the losses, VO-67 flew combat missions for 9 months, with only a 25% loss rate before being disbanded in July of 1968. The Air Force then took over until 1972. In 2008, 40 years after the squadron's actions, VO-67 was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, the highest decoration for combat valor that a unit can receive. Retiring the P-2. As one of the most significant patrol aircraft of the Cold War, the model also participated in the Cuban Missile Crisis and even the U.S. space program. However, as the Cold War progressed in the 1960s, the P-2 Neptune was replaced by the more modern Lockheed P-3A Orion. Even so, the type remained operational in the Naval Air Reserve throughout the mid-1970s, primarily in its SP-2H version, the last and most sophisticated derivative of the Neptune built for the U.S. Navy. As active fleet squadrons continued to update and trade their models in the mid and late 1960s and early 1970s, the Naval Air Reserve Neptunes were eventually replaced, and the P-2 exited the naval service. Moreover, the last U.S. active-duty patrol squadron to operate the SP-2H, the VP-23, retired its last Neptune on February 20th, 1970, while the last Naval Reserve Patrol Squadron to operate the patrol bomber, the VP-94, retired its last model in 1978. A global asset. The Argentine Naval Aviation Branch, which had received 16 Neptunes of different variants in the 1950s, used them prominently in 1978 during Operation Soberania against Chile, including missions over the Pacific Ocean. Then, during the 1982 Falklands War, the last remaining 2 Neptunes in service carried out reconnaissance missions over the South Atlantic Oceans. On May 4th, after detecting a group of British warships, the model helped direct an attack by 2 Dassault super-étendards that successfully sank the British destroyer HMS Sheffield. But despite one last major hurrah, the model was forced to retire from the Argentine Air Force due to a lack of spare parts, resulting from the American arms embargo imposed years earlier. The model also served Canada, the Netherlands, and Australia, and was even used as civilian firefighting units. In Japan, the P-2 Neptune was license-built by the Kawasaki Corporation in the mid-1960s. Rebranded as the P-2J, with the piston engines replaced by IHI-built T-64 turboprops, the manufacturing continued much longer than the Lockheed model, remaining in service until the mid-1980s. In the end, a total of 1,036 Neptunes were produced in 7 significant variants, with the United States Navy receiving the vast majority. The model's versatility is quite evident from the many missions it was called on to perform, and it delivered exceptional results, truly setting the standard for modern patrol aircraft. Thank you for watching Dark Skies. Remember to hit the like button before you go. And for more thrilling content, including the secret missions of Observation Squadron 67 and other exciting topics, be sure to subscribe to this and all of the Dark Documentaries channels. We publish new content on a regular basis, so stay tuned for more exciting updates.